Introducing Sports Programming Visionaries, moderated by Jazz Tankay, Senior Artisans Editor, Variety.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're having an incredible morning, learning so much about the power of sports and how we consume it all. I'm so excited to be here for the Sports Programming Visionaries conversation. So let me introduce our panel. To my left, we have Colin Campbell, who's Head of Development at Omaha Productions. We have Jon Dahl, who's Senior VP of Content at NASCAR. Gotham Chopra, filmmaker and co-founder of Revolutionizing Sports. Sitting next to him, we have Meredith Battin, who's VP of Head of Content Planning and Programming at the NFL. And then we have Stephanie Medina, who is Director of Fox NFL Sunday and Fox Sports. And then we have Jon Miller, who's President of Acquisitions and Partnerships at NBC Sports. Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to dive into sports programming and how you've been changing it all. But let's talk a little bit about yourself so the audience know who you are. Colin, take it away. Tell us a little bit about what you do at Omaha.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here. Thanks for having us. I feel like I'm on a beach in these chairs, like a tiki bar. I head up the development team at Omaha. Kind of tasked with a bunch of different things, kind of any creative idea at the company starts with us, whether it's a TV show, a live event, branded campaign, and sometimes it sounds a lot sexier than it is. I just work on a lot of decks. I make a lot of decks and move pictures around and write a lot of copy and then pitch a bunch of stuff, get a lot of no's, and hopefully something hits, and then we get to make it. So kind of the creative hub of the company, and yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah. Jon?
So I'm head of content at NASCAR, and that includes all forms of unscripted content, documentaries, series, specials, made-for-streaming events, you name it, anything you can think of in the unscripted space, but also scripted. There is actually a lot of interest in the scripted world to work with NASCAR on projects. And then there's digital shows and podcasts. There's NASCAR.com, so it's a pretty wide range of content that I oversee.
Great to be here. I feel like so in the 50-yard line here. Gotham, I'm a co-founder of a company called Revolutionizing Sports that's about 7 or 8 years old. We do all sorts of content also, but I would say historically we've been in the premium non-scripted doc space for the most part. Michael Strahan and Tom Brady are co-founders of the company, so over our history we've worked with the two of them, but also with a lot of other elite athletes, from Serena to Simone Biles to Steph Curry, LeBron, etc. I have an amazing team around me, so I get to take a lot of the credit and sit up here for that. But I'm really a storyteller, and we are a storytelling company. I think despite the many luminaries that we work with, we pride ourselves on being creator-driven. And it's a lot because I'm a filmmaker, and I know, and I've worked with a lot of the people on the stage, which I'm excited to talk about, but like just that journey and what it takes to really put something together and get it out there in front of an audience, I think is really hard. And so we pride ourselves on really working closely with creators.
Hi, Meredith Battin, oversee planning and programming for NFL Media. What that entails is all of our linear and digital platforms from NFL Network, Red Zone, the NFL's YouTube channel, podcasts, our FAST channel. I've been there going on 18 years, and when I started, we had a network and we had a website, and so, it's been kind of fascinating as we've had different marketing objectives, trying to reach different audiences, trying different formats, with all these new channels coming into play. Spent a lot of time looking at data, looking at what we're trying to achieve to figure out what content we should be putting on what platforms to achieve those goals.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Medina. I'm the director of Fox NFL Sunday. That's the show that comes on before your football game with Terry Bradshaw, Michael Strahan, Jimmy Johnson, Gronk. It's a show that I've been a part of for 20 years now. I watched it at home, and I said that is one of the best shows I've ever seen. It's clean. It's technologically advanced. I want to be a part of it, and a dream came true, and I ended up working there as an associate director there, and then I'm now the director of it for the last 10 years, and I've also directed baseball, MLB, some MLS, and some college sports as well.
My name is Jon Miller. I'm president of acquisitions and partnerships. I'm the old man at NBC. I've been there for 47 years. I've been in the sports division since 1985. My original background was sales before I went over to programming and acquisitions. Up until recently, oversaw 10,000 hours of programming a year. As many of you know, we're spinning off the Golf Channel and USA Network into a new company called Versant. But I'm basically responsible for all the acquisitions of our live sports, as well as creating a lot of our own properties. We just came off a big event in Lake Tahoe this past weekend, the American Century, which just finished its 36th year, which had over 100,000 people. That's a property that we created out of nothing after we lost Major League Baseball the first time in 1990. So have had a chance to touch all those things, but have also had a chance to have a front row seat to watch this industry grow, evolve, change, and watch broadcast television regain its dominant position, which is kind of fun.
I love that. Oh my gosh, there's going to be so much to dive into. But Jon Miller, Jon, Dahl, Gotham, I mean, you are pioneers in the field of sports programming and storytelling. Talk a little bit about how this space has changed in like the last 3 decades. Jon, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, I will tell you, I'm a firm believer that technology has not been necessarily kind to the entertainment business or the music business or even the news business, but it's been tremendous for the sports business. And that's largely because with live sports, which is really our bread and butter, you have to watch it when it takes place. And the combination of legalized sports betting has certainly enhanced that position. But if you're a Yankee fan or a Dodger fan or a Rams fan or a Bears fan, when your team is playing, you need to make sure you're in front of a device to watch it. Now, it used to be the only place you could watch that was at home in front of a television set, but no longer. You can now watch your favorite team or your favorite sport or your favorite event wherever you want to go. So the leagues and the broadcasters and the media companies have had to adapt and make sure that their signal is available, not only on linear television, but on a digital platform as well. And that's worked out well in our favor because you have to watch it when it takes place, as opposed to an entertainment show or a news show that you can pick up at your convenience. So the only appointment television that really exists anymore is live sports, and that's important to sponsors and marketers and our different partners.
I know we're going to talk about technology in a minute, but before I come to you, Gotham and Jon, speaking about technology, you know, as somebody that's finally understood baseball and seen that little box, I was so upset when I went to a Dodgers game. I was like, oh wait, I can't see if that's a strike or a miss. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need the little box. But anyway, fun fact. Gotham and Jon, what about for you? What changes have you seen?
Well, I've seen, you know, in my time, going back to ESPN, as one of the original executive producers on 30 for 30 with Bill Simmons and Connor Schell, that, you know, documentary programming can rate, that it can draw an audience. It's not, Connor used to say, you know, that documentaries aren't just good for you. Like, you got to watch, like taking medicine, that it's entertainment, you know, and that it can draw you in more to those sports and those individuals who play them. And I think what we did with 30 for 30 back in those days was to build an audience, like to create a film experience that was like watching a scripted movie, like a Hollywood movie, where people want to see the documentary again and again, The You, and some of our biggest hits, you know, like that. And so I think I've seen that relationship grow between original content, documentary storytelling, and live events. Like, Jon's right. It starts with the live rights. It really does. You know, it creates an urgency that very few other genres have. But I think with our, you know, recent documentary series, Earnhardt, with Amazon Prime. So one of our new partners in the new 7-year media rights deal with NASCAR is with Amazon Prime. And so their window started with the Coca-Cola 600 Memorial Day weekend. Now, at that time, we had a documentary series on Earnhardt, a 4-part documentary series, brilliant work done by Imagine Entertainment on the documentary. And we rolled it out like 3 days before the first race that Amazon had. I think all the attention that our documentary series on Earnhardt brought helped maybe feed an audience for that first race on a streaming-only platform. Because I think there's concern, like, will people find the race on Amazon Prime? And I think we saw they absolutely would. The numbers exceeded our expectations. We ended up averaging like over 2.1 million a week on strictly on Prime. And what we saw was that Earnhardt and the success of it and the draw of him fed into the race audience. Then the race coverage and the promotion of the documentary series fed right back into the film. So it's like this really nice circle going for weeks as Amazon was broadcasting races. So I think documentary storytelling, original content like that, can help complement a live audience.
So I was going to take a bit of the counterpoint. Look, obviously, technology has changed everything. All of us have cameras in our hands. We have distribution platforms in our hands. So it has changed the way in which we consume, and to some extent, we create content. But one thing has sort of stayed consistent too, which is storytelling, and great storytelling. Like we are now living in a world obsessed with algorithms, and how do you every platform has a different algorithm in terms of how you capture the audience, et cetera. But the ultimate algorithm is the hero's journey. This is Joseph Campbell. It's the hero of 1,000 faces. It's great characters, great stories, conflict, tension, all of that sort of stuff. And I would say 30 for 30 was the thing that inspired me as a filmmaker. My first project, it's like a reunion up here. Victor Bueller, my producer, who's now our head of development and production, and then we worked with Jon when he was at ESPN. I somehow convinced these guys that I knew everything about cricket when I knew nothing about cricket, but I was Indian, so that was good enough. And they certainly knew nothing about cricket. So that was like my first project. I had seen, the two Escobars and Once Brothers, these things that were like, wait, like you can do this? You can have great documentaries in the world of sports? And that was like a dream for me as a huge sports fan, as a kid who had grown up, child of immigrants. Sports were the language of assimilation for me. So I think storytelling has been consistent, and the form, there's like short form. We went through a mid form phase when Facebook launched their platform a couple years ago, and we conquered that with some stuff, and then that went away. But I think storytelling has been consistent, and really that's what audiences, people are hungry for. And yeah, the sort of relationship with live is incredible. Like, and you certainly in running a business, you see who's got what and sort of target. But I do think that consistency around storytelling and what makes a great story is something that really still drives the business.
Well, I think to that, we've seen shows like Breakpoint and Drive to Survive, those stories, the power of storytelling in those documentaries. Talk about the power of scripted and unscripted storytelling. Stephanie, do you want to kickstart that?
Well, when we spoke earlier, I had just mentioned, and I'm sure all of you, this has happened to all of you, I just stumbled on a show, a Netflix show, Breakpoint, I think it's called, about the tennis players, right? I don't have a big interest in tennis, but it captured me because it started to show me these characters, right? These characters are real people, but it told me about them, told me their backstory, told me about their sacrifices, their journey. Then all of a sudden I'm interested in tennis. So then that shifts me to the live event. And then I find out more that my favorite tennis player, oh wow, they're having a documentary on him. I'm gonna learn a little bit more about him. I just think it all feeds into itself. Instead of being competitive, it just brings people from one section to the other, whether it's reality, scripted, or the actual live event. Fox this year, for the first time, had the Indy 500, and knowing that storytelling is key, but also having some kind of relationship with the character, the drivers, they put a documentary out before that to explain the sport, explain the history of the sport, and they had some of the most iconic drivers of all time, Mario Andretti, on there. And so I just think that it's sports itself, the live event itself, is the best storytelling, because that's the stuff that you're waiting to see what's going to happen, right? You can't predict what's going to happen. You can't predict that the Boston's going to come back down, 3 games and beat the Yankees. And you're not going to predict that after 100 years.
Big Red Sox fan.
The Cubs, the Cubs are finally going to win. It's stuff, and you get to go along these journeys, and you get to see people have their dreams come true. There's nothing better.
Colin, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, our company's funny. Like, we definitely do try to do and what you guys pioneered with premium storytelling. And then we also just do like really absurd stuff like the Manning cast, where Arnold Schwarzenegger comes on with his pet donkey and he's like feeding him while an NFL game's going on. And I think that's been, for me, that's been really fun to work on, is trying to figure out just new, different, weird, oftentimes weird, messy things. To the credit, I think, to the NFL and to ESPN back in 2021 when we launched it, they were like, we want to find new ways to reach people and kind of present our product in a different way. And I think, I don't know if you guys have watched it, the evolution of the show is funny, it's messy, it's in a 3-hour game, you're getting really high X's and O's breakdown on football from Peyton and Eli and guests like Kirk Cousins, who comes on in season and is talking about his experience. But then you're also getting Nate Bargatze doing like a magic trick in the third quarter. And I think that like experimenting with that stuff and that has been really fun to do from our company's perspective. And I think kind of in hand with some of the previous storytelling, we're always looking for like silly, fun things to do as well.
Yeah, and I was going to add, while we don't at NFL Media do nearly as much storytelling as you guys, but I think the point about whether it's scripted, unscripted, any of these other formats, we, more of our fan base is probably more avid, but all of these other touch points, as we're trying to constantly reach new fans, especially with all these different platforms, all of these different touch points can provide a connection to somebody who might not be a fan. You, like you said, find that person, that player that you're then interested in, and then maybe you're going to take the next step. So all of this kind of feeds, into this whole ecosystem, which with all of our partners, we love all of it and kind of see the benefit of it.
We try to, we take a little bit of a different approach. We use our streaming service Peacock to promote to live events. So we have a relationship with Notre Dame. So we've created a new show called Wake Up, Here Come the Irish, which is a 6-part series which will follow Notre Dame during the season. So that helps drive audience to our live broadcast. So that's really where a lot of our unscripted, kind of documentary or follow series will go. It really has to relate to a property that we already have a significant investment in. So we'll do something similar around the NBA and the WNBA once we start that process, but that's been a real important avenue for us to go down because we've seen the success that the 30 for 30s has and obviously what Omaha has been able to do. So it's obviously very important for us to continue to build on our live investment that way.
Speaking of fandoms, there is so much power in fandom, but how are you creating this connection with content, with what you're offering to fans, whether it's in season or off season, and how do you navigate the landscape because it's such a huge space to find your way around and connect with the fans? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I think it's kind of finding and paying attention to those platforms where people are aggregating. For us, the most recent edition where we're spending a lot of time and efforts is on FAST. For those who maybe don't know that, free ad-supported television, people who maybe don't have cable or are just looking for different content. And we have a lot of partners that we kind of use to distribute a lot of our content. And we find during game windows, kind of not surprising, but a little bit surprising, that's when people are coming there most often. And so probably because they don't have any other ways to get to the NFL. So making sure we are programming with content that kind of makes sense. And so it's keeping your eyes on kind of the broad landscape, but then drilling down and understanding some of the patterns and habits of the users on those platforms to try to serve the needs that you think people are coming there from.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the FAST platforms, quite honestly. We launched our NASCAR channel in January. On Tubi exclusively originally. Now we're headed toward being on about half a dozen platforms, and it's done really well, really well from what we expected, I think, at launch. And we weren't the first in the sports space or any space to be on a FAST platform. So I think you're looking for where are those audiences, and I think FAST is going to continue to grow more and more over time. And our YouTube channel, you try to tailor content that's going to work for the YouTube channel. I think we're trying to grow our NASCAR YouTube channel. We had a guy, Cletus McFarland, who's kind of a viral, sensation, and put an in-car camera with him at Daytona Next thing you know, we got like 800,000 views or something, and you know, we're adding subscribers, like 25,000 subscribers, just like that. So you look for those individual content creators that also have a following.
Can I ask Jon? I think your job's super cool, really cool. When you work with league partners and you're trying to either pitch them to bring their product to NBCU, are you making a case for like, hey, here's some tech we're gonna bring, here's some innovations we're gonna bring? Like, and I'm curious, like, I'm always curious about that selling point.
I think probably the best example of what you're talking about, Colin, is when we acquired the Premier League. And Jazz and I talked about this when we spoke earlier this week. So when Comcast acquired NBC back in 2011, they kind of handed us the keys to a 24-hour sports network called Versus, which we then rebranded as NBCSN. It was in 65 million homes. It was dwarfed by ESPN, which was in 105 million homes. So we knew we had a lot of ground to make up. And we didn't have a particularly appealing programming lineup. I think of the 7,500 hours that they were airing on Versus, 5,000 of them were hunting and fishing. No disrespect to the hunters and fishermen who are out there, but I certainly wasn't getting up on a Saturday or Sunday morning to watch hunting and fishing. So when the Premier League came and we knew it was available, and it was a property that really, checked a lot of boxes for us, we had to convince the Premier League that we could give them a landing space and a platform that would really touch all their different constituents. So Saturday and Sunday mornings, for the most part, were not a place where people would go to watch sports. The Premier League had been on ESPN and Fox Soccer, but had really not been marketed and promoted and showcased the way I thought that we could bring all the different assets that NBC Universal had at their disposal to the table. So that included getting the Today Show to talk about it, using our cable platforms, our regional sports networks, our owned and operated stations, and our affiliate body. So we made that pitch to the Premier League, and as a result, we created a new day part where the Premier League now is an accepted, property here in the U.S., which is right up there with the NHL and maybe not the NBA or the NFL, but certainly competitive with any other major sports property. And by having the whole thing, by having all 380 games to put on different platforms, you could really merchandise it and market it and exploit it to where it was valuable for you, where it would drive distribution and drive sponsorship and drive engagement. But one of the benefits that we didn't expect, which we've obviously been happy about, is we've greatly increased the value not only of Premier League franchises, but soccer in general. So if you talk to Rob McElhenney, who's now known as Rob Mack, for those of you who didn't know he changed his name, the value of Wrexham, which is one level below the Premier League, has gone through the roof. And all these other teams, and it's all because of what America has embraced with English soccer. So that's how we go about doing it. And certainly talking about the technology aspect of being able to watch it any place at any time has certainly helped.
I want to jump on what you said about merchandise, because as I said, when I first moved here 10 years ago, nobody was wearing like a Messi shirt. All of a sudden, like little kids are wearing Messi shirts, Ronaldo shirts. Like, talk about the power of how the Premier League and soccer has changed amongst like culture in general to that.
If you walk down, if you're in Times Square, if you ever come to New York City, you used to see Yankees, Giants, Cowboys, whatever, Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA jerseys. Now people are walking around with Liverpool or PSG. It's not just the Premier League. It's all international soccer. And I think it's such a global sport. The U.S. is such a melting pot. We have so many people who've come here from other places but love the sport so much. And we've given them that opportunity and that avenue to watch it. But I think marketing and merchandising has been a big part of that.
Another sport that has really taken off has been Formula One, and we've got this film out right now, produced by Lewis Hamilton, starring Brad Pitt, in case you haven't seen it. Talk about how this intersection between Hollywood and sports, how that helps, bring audiences to something like Formula One. Like, I know so many people who were like, no idea what this sport is. I'm watching it. I'm obsessed with it the next day.
I mean, we saw it at NASCAR with Days of Thunder, with Tom Cruise in 1990. That was big, and it really was at the forefront of a major period of growth for NASCAR in the 90s. And then about 20 years ago, Talladega Nights, the Ballad of Ricky Bobby. And Cars. The Cars has been a very successful franchise. So we have seen the power of scripted projects and what it can do for your sport, and it's really phenomenal what it can bring in terms of just reaching a wider audience than you might normally reach.
I mean, what I would add there, again, from the storytelling perspective, is sports are mythic. Sports are about human potential, for the athletes or the drivers. It's about, can you reach your highest potential? How can you push yourself? And, I've, over the years, had the privilege of working with so many of these athletes, and you start to hear very consistent messages that, failure is more important than success, and, teamwork and building relationships, and that's how you achieve success. We've all heard the sort of expressions about, it's not the best team necessarily wins, not the fastest car. It's about the chemistry, and sometimes the teams with the best chemistry win, like the Red Sox. I don't know. And so I think there's power in storytelling. There's sort of, sports is a living mythology, and it's unfolding through the live events. The Premier League is not just a bunch of soccer teams or football teams. It is when you go to the UK, the conversation you have with the guy who picks you up from the airport, or the person who's handling your bags, or the woman who's checking you in, is, who's your club? And it's part of their identity. And it's not just the Premier League teams. It's the Championship leagues, the League One teams, the League Two teams. It's part of the culture. So our company name is the Religion of Sports, because it means something to people. And I think that drives, I didn't really know much about Formula One. Then I watched Drive to Survive, and I was kind of like you were saying, it's you get invested in these characters and these teams. And, I think why Formula One, the movie F1, is succeeding is not just because of Brad Pitt. He's wow, holy shit, he still looks pretty good. But also it's just man, those race cars, and on that IMAX, it's just it's almost like science fiction. It's powerful, and it's moving, and it's dangerous. And I think all of that is omnipresent in sports. It's every weekend there's another miracle. There's a new, look at the WNBA. It's just a whole generation of heroes. And by the way, there have been women crushing that league for years, but suddenly, is it Caitlin Clark or whatever it is, it sort of reaches that critical mass, and now it's a thing. But it's the power of sports, and I think it's pretty exhilarating to be part of this at this point.
One cool part, we've got our first scripted show coming out in late September, which I have no credit for. Ben Brown is in the audience, who heads up our scripted team. It's starring Glenn Powell, and it's based on a sketch from one of our shows called Chad Powers, where Eli Manning went undercover as a walk-on at Penn State in his show Eli's Places. We actually copied the NBC model of Ted Lasso. So thank you, Jon, for that. You're a producer on the show. I'm telling you here. But the really cool part of it is the leagues and conferences have been super supportive. For example, the show is set at a fictional SEC school. We were down this week at SEC Media Days, actually shooting promos and bumpers for the show with real SEC coaches. And I think that's a really cool thing from a conference and in the league perspective. In your case, when you get momentum on a project, I think everyone really wants to put their best foot forward and support it, which is cool.
Colin, I will tell you, it wasn't always that way. I mean, for the longest time, you'd have leagues that would push back. They didn't want this kind of outside shoulder programming or stuff. They wanted the game to be the thing. They didn't, they were very protective of their IP. They were very protective of their brand. And now they've seen, exactly what's happened with Ted Lasso. We ended up getting the Premier League to agree to give their marks and let them use it. What happened with Drive to Survive in F1 is clearly what NASCAR did with Talladega Nights was revolutionary, and it's made a big difference.
Speaking to the power of sports, the other thing is, sports creates community. And I feel in this time now, so many people that I've been speaking to have been turning to sports rather than the news as an escape. Talk about the power of sports and community tied together.
I have a colleague at Fox, his name is Ben Valente. He does a lot of research on this exact thing. And I don't think anyone is going to be surprised to hear that people who watch sports are, in general, happier people. And I think that goes along with the research that we've heard for the last few years, where about longevity or your own happiness, it's critical, your relationships with people, your social relationships, your community. And what do we do the most in community is watch sports, get together with your Super Bowl parties, or you go to the bar with your friends and you watch Sunday Night Football, whatever it might be. And I think even if you're alone watching it, you're still texting with a group of friends, right? So I think those social connections, that community, you can go the next morning to work and you have something to talk about, something that you're both familiar with, even if you're on opposing sides like the Red Sox or the Dodgers, for instance. But I think it's just a way that people feel part of something, and I think that's crucial to our happiness and to, being friendlier with each other and kinder.
We're all Shohei fans, so he cuts through. Yeah.
I'll tell you what's interesting, though. I don't know if anybody saw, and this just happened in the past 24 hours. Scotty Scheffler, who's the #1 golfer in the world, was in a media day on, I guess it was Tuesday or Wednesday, and was asked the question. And he said, winning is great, but it's not fulfilling. It's not the most important thing in my life. And, you feel great for a short period of time, and then it's over. No athlete has ever been that honest. And the reaction in the golf world has been amazing, but the reaction overall to have an athlete come out and kind of bare his soul and say, there's a lot more important things in my life than just winning a golf tournament, I thought was really, really impressive. And I've read 3 more columns about it today, and people who don't even follow golf are citing it. So I think that's an interesting thing. We put so much pressure and we elevate these athletes in these teams and put them on a pedestal. And we don't realize how much pressure that they're under. They're in the spotlight, and it's a big, big thing when someone comes out and says something like that.
Yeah, I was just going to add. I think it's a very sort of common thing you hear, and I think it's very true about how sports unites people and sports celebrates human potential and all that other stuff I said. But I also think, and it's really important in this moment in time, sports is a language, and sports is a place, sports is politics. I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, sports and politics should live, in separate worlds. And, sports is politics. It historically has been politics. One of the projects, reconnected with somebody who used to be at Showtime, which I'm very sad is no longer around. But, we did a project there called Shut Up and Dribble that was, with LeBron, but it wasn't another sort of LeBron story. It was about something that he was really passionate about, which was using his platform to explore issues, in particular about social justice. This came out a couple of years ago, and he stands on the back of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Russell and Oscar Robertson and Allen Iverson and so many of these people who used their platform at a time when it was much more difficult than LeBron James, one of the biggest athletes in the world. But historically, Martina Navratilova was a trailblazer, and I do think sports, especially in this time right now, especially in this city right now, as a language to talk about things that are going on, to explore things. And I think that's an important part of the sports vernacular. It is, look, the games are amazing, and we go and we all become one, and we sort of, whatever our differences are, we can sort of be Red Sox fans and hate on Yankee fans. But I also think outside of the stadiums, it's important to recognize sports as this instrument to explore things, gender equity, et cetera, that are happening in our culture, that are important topics to explore.
Meredith, what about with you? How are you using the NFL to build the power of community?
I was just thinking though of your response of we've talked a lot about the platforms and how all these new platforms have given us all so many more spaces to kind of put out our work and connect with fans. But, the other, advantage is all the players have now platforms, right? Whereas years ago, maybe wasn't as easy to get your message out or to represent who you were and find, others who maybe aren't a fan of your team, but are a fan of your message. And so, I think we do a lot working with players and kind of helping them to find their voice and find ways for them to, whether it's on social media or a YouTube channel or, doing a project with one of these guys, but to have different platforms and kind of be comfortable to put their messages out there. So it's not just about, the game, the live game and anything we're doing, but all of these players are so critical in kind of driving all of that as well, but also, they're public figures, and all these platforms give them, that opportunity to kind of represent themselves and connect with fans.
I love what you're doing with the flag football for girls around the country. I think it's so fun. I'd love to play football, but tiny. But I love the flag aspect of it. It's fun.
Talk a little bit about that and that initiative.
Yeah, Flag, it's something that we've been working on for years, and I think, Flag is something, why it's so important is everyone can play Flag, and from a very young age, both boys and girls, men and women, and so, and I think, there's a lot of research and data that's been done to show if you play football, you're more likely to become a fan of football, and so this is just a whole nother avenue to get younger people playing and hopefully bringing them up, kind of to be NFL fans. But with Flag in the Olympics in the coming years too, right? It's kind of just exploding. But yeah, the ability for women to participate and showcase. I mean, you've seen maybe in some of our Super Bowl commercials, some of the amazing women that we've showcased. But yeah, it's another avenue and a really important avenue to connect with more athletes, more fans that love the game.
Yeah, I mean, NASCAR is built on accessibility, and it has been for a long time, that our drivers are so close to the fans that follow them, and it's such a loyal following that our sport and our drivers have. I'm amazed just like how engaged our drivers are with fans and fan events, like so close to the race. I'm like, don't you need to concentrate and focus? Like, there's fans on pit road, like right up to when they say to drivers, start your engines. Like, you don't see that in any other sport where like there's fans on the field like 5 minutes before kickoff. You just don't see that. So I'm just blown away by how they're able to transition and be as accessible as they are for as long as they can be until like they literally have to start their engine and race.
I went to my first NASCAR race this weekend. I was telling John, it was awesome. I never really watched NASCAR. It was super fun. The other thing I did not know, which is insane, is you can bring your own cooler of beer to a race. Like, that is accessible. Like, that is insane.
Wait, how loud is it down there, though?
Very loud. If you're right there on the track. I mean, if you use like AirPods and put it on noise cancellation, it works pretty well. But my wife has reminded me that doesn't still fully protect your hearing the way you gotta maybe wear the headphones to have that full protection. But it's loud. But NASCAR is very much appealing to your senses of colors and sights and smells and sounds. That's what makes it so fun for audiences.
Yeah, I was telling John, I remember when we did a project a couple of years ago, and I didn't really know. I grew up in the Northeast. I was a Yankee, not a Yankee, but Yankee from the Northeast. But when I went to my first race at the Coca-Cola 600, and you see those, it was like science fiction. The only thing I could liken it to is I once, when I was a kid, went down and saw the space shuttle launch, and it was like, is this of this planet? I mean, those cars racing at those speeds, that close together, the sound of it, it was unbelievable. It was breathtaking, and again, like felt like mythic. Like, just, this is science fiction, superhuman.
We've been a partner with NASCAR since 2000, and I think what people underestimate is just how much technology goes into NASCAR. It's really a very sophisticated, high-end, property sport where there's an awful lot of technology involved. Everybody likes to talk about F1, and F1 is a great property, and don't get me wrong, they're on the brink of getting a new deal with Apple, but NASCAR is far and away the dominant #1 motorsport in this country, followed right behind by Xfinity, which is the #2 motorsport in this country. And part of that success has to do with their accessibility. I think so many fans are able to touch the sport, are able to talk to crew chiefs and drivers and pit crews and stuff like that, that it really builds an affinity. And I know you have the research that shows that people who are fans of NASCAR are more likely to support sponsors and partners of NASCAR than any other sport, which is another reason why they have such great success.
Yeah.
I was going to add too, the point of you guys experiencing the event live, that's a lot of what's fueling our international strategy as well. So we're doing games, across Europe and in Brazil and Australia next year. And it's that point when you go to a game, right, seeing it in person, seeing how big the guys are, how small they are, how fast everything happens, like it creates that like different amazement of like, wow, this is way more than even what you can see on TV. So finding those opportunities to get more people in to see the game and kind of hopefully then draw them in even more is kind of a big thing, that live experience.
Jon, I want to come back to something you said about F1 possibly, signing that deal with Apple. Like, how do you feel that's going to change the F1 audience? And
Well, this is probably not the most popular thing to say, but I think that when you lose that linear exposure and that broad reach, I think it's very, very tough to grow your sport. NASCAR, as I said, is number one. Xfinity's number two. IndyCar, which has a great deal with Fox, which we did for a long time, is the number three motorsport in this country. So to take that step off of ESPN and go to a streaming-only platform, it's going to require an awful lot of work on the part of both F1 and Apple to get that messaging out there. And if they want to grow their audience, they're going to have to really redouble their efforts, as opposed to NASCAR, which has four, partners with NBC, Fox, Turner, and Amazon, who are all four promoting not only to their broadcasts, but we promote to our competitors, which is one of the things that NASCAR engages us to do, and we're happy to do it because, that expression of rising tide lifts all boats. So the more we all promote the property, they're not going to have anybody else promoting them besides Apple. And that's going to be a challenging place for them to be. Now, it's a great sport, don't get me wrong, and the technology in Formula One and how they've grown in this country has been impressive. But they're also somewhat hamstrung by the fact that the majority of their races take place at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. So they're not in a favorable time period, like the way NASCAR is at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon or some prime time races. So they've got a pretty heavy lift ahead of them.
we'll watch this space. As we come to a close, I want to ask everybody on this panel what your favorite sporting highlight has been over the last year, because we've had some great ones. Jon, I'm going to start with you.
Wow, we've been blessed with a lot of great events this past year, but clearly the Olympics in Paris, which technically is still within the 12-month period. So I'm gonna use that as a crutch and talk about the great performance that the U.S. team and that obviously NBC enjoyed during the Olympics, whether it was Simone Biles' great comeback or watching the Dream Team, watching all the different sports come together for that great performance in Paris. Was an unbelievable host city. They were probably the gold medalist if you really want to give somebody a medal. So I'd have to say that the 24 Olympics in Paris.
Love that.
That was amazing. Well, I have to say this year's Super Bowl, and I'm saying it to be sort of funny, I guess, because it was the most watched Super Bowl of all time on Fox. However, if we're being honest, it was not the most exciting game we've ever seen, right? It was a bit of but it was still the most watched, which goes to kind of what we were talking about today. It's that people are together, they're having a party, it's a community, they're enjoying something together. It is an appointment to television, as they say, to watch a Super Bowl together. And so being part of that is always amazing. I love it.
It was a great halftime show, though.
Amazing.
Right?
I was going to go back 2 years. I'm a Michigan girl, so I was going to say the Michigan championship, and we'll forget about this past college football season. But I'm a tennis fan, tennis player, and so not a specific event, but coming off of Wimbledon, which just was fantastic. But it's really been awesome to see the greater interest in tennis, some of the younger people coming up, and just how exciting and engaged that all the big tour stops have been.
I mean, I know it's over a year ago, but as a diehard Celtics fan, I'm just saying the 24 championship was a thing. And I'm enjoying the Red Sox current 10-game winning streak right now. I mean, look, I'm still a diehard fan. I've been doing this for a long time, and people always ask, oh, can you still kind of enjoy the games? And I'm like, yes, I will tomorrow at 11:20 when the Red Sox are playing the Cubs be on my, whatever MLB app watching that game. So I still love it. Look, as a storyteller, we got to be a part of Simone Biles. We did something with Netflix and really tracked her journey, going back when we started working with her in 2019 and all through what happened in Tokyo, and then the sort of affirmation of her goatness in Paris last year. So that was special to be a part of. And again, it's relationships. Like Simone is now, she's part of our company. She joined the board, et cetera. But she's, I mean, I used to say, oh, it's like my sister. She's like my daughter now. That's how old I am and I've been around. But it's special to be a part of that sort of incredible achievement. So I have a lot, but and that's the thing about sports. There'll be something coming. Hopefully tomorrow at 11:20. That'll be my next.
I just love that he knows the time.
For me, it was my first Daytona 500. I went to the Daytona 500 this past February, and I'd been to the track once before, but I'd never actually seen the Daytona 500. And I got my wife to go. She's a tennis journalist, so she came up from a tennis tournament, and we met, in Daytona and went to the race. My son was there, my 15-year-old son, and it's just a really special experience because, first of all, I'm predisposed to like the bigger ovals. It's about the speeds they go at. It's incredible, but also, it's our Super Bowl. Unlike the NFL, which ends with the Super Bowl, a week later we start with our Super Bowl, which is the Daytona 500. So it's an iconic event. It's been around, almost 7 decades now. And so to be there and experience it firsthand, see how my son reacts to it, see how my wife reacts to it, really was memorable for me.
Colin?
We've been shooting with the WWE for the past 8 months for a follow doc, similar to our show Quarterback, and it's been a wild experience. That is a league operation that is unlike anything I've ever experienced before, and it's fascinating. It's a traveling circus, and Nick Khan and Triple H, who kind of are the heads there, they told us we're going to give you access that you guys have never had before, and we've been in the writers' room seeing storylines coming together leading up to WrestleMania, following some of these superstars on their journey, and it's this weird hybrid between sports, entertainment, and scripted, and the show's coming out in 2 weeks called WWE Unreal on Netflix. It's been super fun to work on. I think it's unlike any other follow doc that has been in the space. So I've had a ton of fun working on it, and I'm excited for it to come out.
People are so excited for that show, by the way. I want to thank you all for being trailblazers in sports programming, and thank you for that incredible insight into your work, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for our next conversation.